let me just straight out ask you, as a market participant, how do you view the presidential debate that just took place now?
I didn't watch the whole debate. I watched snippets of it and some very specific snippets. Agnostic to politics and sides, my assessment is that Trump has won the debate clearly. So President Biden, he had moments of absence, stuttered a bit, he had to check his notes. So if I had to assess on a pure performance, agnostic to politics, President Trump seemed much more forceful and present in the debate.
Do you think that markets are being too complacent about what could happen in the next 4 years, should perhaps President Biden be reelected, or even President Trump himself? Both of them are slightly older in age. Should markets be pricing in for the possibility of perhaps a change of presidential candidates, or even a change in president once the term has begun?
So you're absolutely right. Markets are not pricing this specific point, but also not pricing the fact that both of them have economic and financial policies that would be detrimental to the United States today. One of them is increasing deficit, not increasing taxes, spending, stopping immigration, hence increasing unemployment. And the other is the opposite. Both of these are bad economically and financially for the U.S.
So this sounds to me, if we go along that route of renationalization, putting up barriers, introducing tariffs, all of that sounds inflationary to me.
100%.
How problematic is that going to be for Fed, who are clearly very keen to get going on the rate-cutting cycle?
That's precisely it. The Fed today is cornered, and that's why the Fed is not cutting rates, because on one side you have fiscal spending that is massive, which is creating the multiplier effect. As you know, government spending of $1 translates into $5 in the economy. Hence, the Fed today cannot cut rates. Second, as you rightly mentioned, if we get into that scenario, then the Fed cannot cut. And that is why today the Fed is one of the last central banks in the developed world who hasn't cut rates yet.
Do you think there's any calculus at all? I mean, I know at the last meeting, Powell was specifically asked about this and whether they're thinking about the elections and the timing of the first rate cut. He said we're completely independent. But do you think there is an element of the Fed wanting to start cutting before the election takes place?
So, Jemana, we always say the Fed is independent, but we have seen historically that the Fed is always influenced by politics. Our assessment is that the Fed will avoid cutting rates before the elections because it might be misinterpreted massively. So I think the Fed would prefer a status quo until after the elections and then act on it depending on which president comes on board.
Right, even though there are 2 rate cuts penciled in. Let's turn to the equities performance. You put in one of your notes, and I think it's a fairly valid point, that the market has completely given up on anything related to the macroeconomic cycle. The theme that we talk about day in, day out is AI, or mostly NVIDIA. If NVIDIA pulls back, then the market gets scared. But when NVIDIA is having a good run, it seems to lift up the rest of the market as well. How long can we continue in this paradigm for?
Oh, it can continue as long as it wants, as long as money is flowing and there's liquidity in the system. I called it a one-legged market, and we don't invest into one-legged market. You discuss often with your guests and compare to year 2000, right? Just the fact of comparing it to year 2000 means we are in an overvaluation territory and a bubble territory. We do not invest client institutional money into bubble territory, period. This can continue long enough. People can make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. Don't your clients worry
that they're missing out on the run, though? If you're not invested in AI and you're not invested in NVIDIA, aren't they saying to you, well, look, we're missing out, we're underperforming the market here?
Wealthy clients are concerned by wealth preservation rather than chasing these 10, 15%. This is more retail. And if you look, the retail portion today in U.S. markets is massive compared to historicals. And this is what's driving it. Go on Reddit. Just look at what retail clients are talking about. It's a retail market today driven by retail, and institutions are sellers. Through funds, you have indirect investments from retail as well. So we estimate around 60% of what we're seeing today is driven by retail.